he could read French, German, English. That was no problem for an academic in the 19th century. But when he was invited, he realized, of course, that he was not very used to speak it very well. So, of course, he had been to London. He had been to England many times because he liked that country. But when he got his invitation, he thought, well, I have to practice my English. I have to practice my English. So he found someone, a British lady, to come over to his Amsterdam house and to live with his family for 4 or 5 months. And they agreed that when they were at table, they would speak English only. So no Dutch, no Dutch was allowed. So the whole family practiced their English, and Kuyper did so as well. So and Kuyper, so he practiced his English a lot in the months before he went to the United States, but also, of course, he had to write his lectures in English. So what he first did was write them in Dutch, send them to friends in the United States, among them Gerhardus Vos, and ask them to translate it. So Gerhardus Vos translated a lot of text for Kuyper and for Bavinck, and also one of the lectures, and the other lectures were translated by others. And then they were sent back to Kuyper, and he started reading them and said, no, this is not my English. This is not fluent enough. This is not how I want to express myself. So then he said to this lady, Mrs. Ashton, he said, well, can you help me? And let me go every day, 1 or 2 hours, through those lectures and discuss every sentence, and maybe make it a little bit more fluid, make it a little bit more literary, etc. So they did together close reading, and they amended the texts, and then finally he said, well, I'm satisfied now, and I have this text printed in 10 or 12 copies, and I take them with me to the United States. And he left in August, and 1 or 2 days before he left, the books, the 10 books were ready. And then he gave one as a present, of course, to Mrs. Ashton. And he left some at home, and some he took with him on the boat to the United States. So that's the original text that he took with him on the boat. And first he went to the Adirondacks. That's how you pronounce it?
Sure.
The mountains.
Sure.
Yeah. So he first went to the Adirondacks, and because he loved hiking, and he hiked for 2 weeks in those mountains, and he trained on those stacks in his hotel room. He made them a little bit shorter, and then he was ready to go to Princeton. And then he arrived in Princeton to give his lectures. But the interesting thing is that's the story I was able to reconstruct from correspondence, etc. And then there is a copy of Kuyper's stone lectures in the library of Princeton Theological Seminary.
Yes.
That was a copy Benjamin Warfield got. And in it, he wrote on the front page a story about the translation of those texts. And that's a very interesting story. He says, well, while Kuyper was in the Adirondacks, he sent us the Dutch text and asked me, to translate these. And Warfield thought, oh, how can I do this in 10 days? So he sent them to friends in the United States and asked them to translate this text as soon as possible, because within 10 days, the text had to be delivered.
Right.
So he sent them to people in Iowa, but also Gerhardus Vos, Warfield says, translated one, and several others. And then Kuyper came and gave his lectures from this translation that Warfield had organized. But the interesting thing is that all the letters and all the information I found on the stone lectures and on how the text came into being are not compatible with what B.B. Warfield wrote. So I first told you the story of Kuyper sending texts to his friends, and so I can prove that from letters in his archive. So by May, June 1898, he was done with that correspondence. He had received all the text, and he made with Mrs. Ashton the definite English text. And now Warfield has a story. He sent us not an English text, but a Dutch text, and he asked us to translate it. So it seems, if you read Warfield's story, there are two translations. One translation Kuyper organized himself, and one translation he ordered. He asked Warfield to organize that. So, and yeah, well, the interesting thing is that Warfield wrote this command in the published edition, the official published edition of the Stone Letters, which was published in 1899, so the year after. And so when Kuyper came to New York, he made a contract with an American publishing house, and they said, okay, we will publish it in 1899. And the same happened in the Netherlands. It also was published in the Netherlands in Dutch, but also in 1899, in the spring. So Warfield wrote it in that volume, and not in one of the 10 copies that are still there. I can show you one copy, by the way.
Yes, you have one of the 10.
Wait a second.
Sure.
So this is one of the 10 copies.
Oh my!
This is one of the 10 copies, and if you open it, you can see it's a blank page and it's a printed page.
Yes.
It's a very large letter, so you can easily read it. Short lines. So of this book, there are about 6 or 7 copies still extant. 3 or 4 are in the special collections of Princeton Theological Library. One is with me, one is in the Vrije Universiteit Library, and there's another minister in the Netherlands who has one. But that's about it. But this text, I think, and I think I can prove that from the sources, this is the text Kuyper used, and this is the text Kuyper read.
Yes.
But Warfield has a different story, which is very interesting because most of the times, if someone has such a story, you can connect it to other archival information like letters, diaries, etc. But all the information that I found refers to this copy and not to the story that Warfield told. So that's a complexity, and it's very hard to explain because, well, if Warfield would not have been a very precise person, but he was always very exact in what he wrote. So I cannot explain it.
Yeah.
You also might say maybe he wrote it in 1920 when he was about to die, and when his head when his thoughts were confused or something like that. But there's no hint that Warfield was confused in 1920. He still worked on. He died more or less suddenly. So it's difficult to explain.